Where did you go to school?
Went to school in Sydney in Belmore South. I went to an infant school at Belmore South, and then I moved up to a primary school. Um, they were in the same area, but they were two completely different buildings.
How long did you go to school for?
Um, I started school in the early 1950s, and I went for 12 years, I suppose. I only went to intermediate stage, which is 3 years into high school. Um, these about probably equivalent to school certificate stage. I left school when I was about 15. I started school when I was about 5, I suppose.
What changes have you seen in school since you went to school?
We still have classrooms. We still had desks to write at. The only difference is we used pencils to start off with, and then we changed to ink wells. Now, an ink well is where we had to make up ink every morning out of a powder with water and mix it all around to get a blackish colour, and then we put it in our ink wells. And on our desks we had a little spot to put our ink wells in, and then we used that to write with using a special pen which had nibs on them. Um, Different today, we only have pencils and maybe biros. We used to have to clean out our ink wells. We had to clean off the blackboard, and the blackboard that the teacher used was written on with chalk. So we had to clean that after every period so that we could start off the next subject.
How many students were in your class?
Just about all the time we had probably around about 30 students in the class, both in the primary school and the high school.
How did you get to school?
I remember we used to catch a bus to school, and it wasn't a school bus, it was just an ordinary bus. And our school was about 10, 12 kilometres from home, and my brothers and I used to catch the bus, and then we'd either walk home or catch a bus home. I can't ever remember being taken to school by anybody in the car or dropped off or picked up, and more often than not I walked home, and quite often by myself, even though I was only about 7 or 8.
Did you have to wear school uniforms?
And we had uniforms all the way through. As high was black, blue, and gold. The ties were black, blue, and gold striped. I think it was a grey shirt and grey trousers, I think, or grey pants shorts. Yeah. My favourite subject, it's hard to say. Over the years, it's changed. I didn't like maths when I was at school, but I liked English and history, especially Old English history and Australian history. I loved Australian history, learning all about what happened in Australia back in the 1800s and the 1700s when Cook and Phillip first came here.
Did your school have computers?
No computers at all in our schools at all growing up. Computers really didn't come into the teaching area until probably the 90s, late 80s, early 90s. Um, I was able to learn to type when I left school. I learned to type, which was a benefit to me. But otherwise, everything was by hand, and we wrote everything down by hand. If we wanted to look something up, we used to have to go to the library and look it up in a encyclopedia. Real big books, real big heavy books, and we have to go through and look for different items in the books. So no Google, no nothing like that to look up things on.
What school sports did you get involved in?
At the infants and primary school, we only had the sports that we basically played at in games. We played cricket in the grounds of the school. We played football. Touch wasn't around so much in those days, nor was handball. Even though we might have bounced a ball up against a wall, we didn't actually call it handball. We just used to bounce the ball around.
What happened if you did the wrong thing at school?
The cane was in use, and now the cane was a long thin piece of bamboo, and if you did something wrong in classroom, like talking in the classroom or doing something to upset the teacher, he or she would bring you out to the front of the classroom and hit you across the hand with this cane. Um, I must admit, I got the cane a few times. When I was in high school, I was sent down to the principal's office, the headmaster's office, for talking in class. Imagine me talking. I'm not a great talker sometimes, but I was talking in class this time, and I was sent down to the headmaster's office, and he gave me 6 cane sticks on the hand, which wasn't very pleasant. It certainly stopped me from talking in class in the future.
Was there a canteen at your school?
No, we didn't, not at the primary school or the infant school. We used to have to take our lunch with us, and we had milk delivered to the school every day. And I think this was where I learnt my distaste for milk, because the milk was delivered at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, and we didn't get to drink it until about 11 o'clock in the morning at recess, and by that time it was usually quite warm. So didn't like milk after that. But in high school we had a canteen, and just about everybody used the canteen.
What is your favourite memory about school?
Well, there's lots of them floating around. I used to like talking to my teachers. In high school, especially, I had several teachers who went on to do bigger and better things. I had an English teacher who the other students didn't like, but I liked because he was a bit of an actor. And I remember bringing in a book of verse of C.J. Dennis. And C.J. Dennis is a wonderful Australian poet. And I brought this book in to show him, and he made the whole lesson around these verses that C.J. Dennis wrote. And he went on to be an actor. I've seen him on TV, and he was actually Captain Cook in one of the replays of Captain Cook arriving in Botany Bay back in 1770. So that would have been in the 60s. I probably saw him do that. So probably that would be the most outstanding area for me in my teaching.
Thank you for listening. Goodbye.